The governing party of South Africa, the ANC, will be marching to the Israeli embassy in Pretoria today. The party is calling for a cessation of violence in the Middle East as the conflict between Israel and Hamas intensifies. Thousands of people have been killed from both sides since Israel declared a war against Hamas 2 weeks ago. For more information on this, we'll be speaking to SABC News reporter. There is Canny Maphanga, who can see there behind her is joined by some ANC supporters. And the statement that has just come through now from the presidency is that the president has been invited by the president of Egypt to have a discussion around how to find peace in the Middle East. The statement here reading that President Ramaphosa will on Saturday attend the Cairo summit for peace at the invitation of His Excellency Fattah al-Sisi, the president of the Arab Republic of Egypt. The summit will discuss the ongoing escalation of the conflict in Israel and the Gaza Strip, the urgent need for the humanitarian support, and also make a call for the resumption of the peace process. And of course, this has been an issue that the ANC has been pushing for. Canny Maphanga, they're joined by ANC members who are supposed to be marching to the Israeli embassy in Pretoria. Canny, good morning. Thank you once again for making time for us. Tell us about the picket and the people who have come out in support of what the ANC is also calling for.
Well, indeed, morning to you, Aljan, and to the viewers at home. Of course, the ANC will be reaffirming its long-standing position as Friends of Palestine, with the ANC marching to the Israeli embassy amid the ongoing Palestine-Hamas conflict, which has seen a devastating loss of life. To keep all these voices that we might be speaking to this morning, I just want to quickly turn to the ANC spokesperson first, who joins us here ahead of the march that will be heading to the Israeli embassy, which is about 3 kilometers away from here. The ANC is reaffirming its position today, standing in solidarity with the people of Palestine.
Yes, the ANC's position has always been consistent. We stand with the people of Palestine. We have done so over decades. We believe they too have a right to self-determination. They too have a right to have a fully fledged state in which they can exercise their own constitutionalism and their own rule of law. We believe that Israeli and Palestinians should be able to live together side by side, which is why we have always called for a two-state solution. But we are here to pledge our long-standing support with our brothers and sisters, mothers and the children of Palestine, joining both the global north and the global south, which has really risen up to say this must come to an end.
Amid the ongoing conflict and the ANC's long-standing position, we have seen a resolution such as the downgrading of the Israeli embassy. Some may look at the governing party and ask, why does the Israeli government still enjoy this level of status in the country when the ANC itself was quite familiar, or the nation itself is quite familiar with an oppressive system and has spoken for many years against this? Why does the Israeli government still enjoy this status?
Well, these matters are negotiated matters because we are part of the international diplomatic community. And I'm now speaking in terms of what government's posture is on that matter. I'm speaking for the ANC. I don't want to conflate the party and the state. But even that whole near downgrade is no small feat. Takes a lot of negotiation to come to a conclusion of that nature. We're here to campaign. We're here to protest together with progressive civil society in South Africa, the churches, members of the Islamic faith. They will talk about that. I'm sure they will make their own demands for that matter about whether we must still exist and have a mission there. But I don't have any authority to make a pronouncement on that.
Thank you so much, Sis Maphanga, ANC spokesperson speaking to us now. Aldrin, just before we wrap, there are quite a number of activists that have shown up to the picket today, to the Israeli embassy. I'm joined by Fatima, a South African, but pro-Palestine and activist. What does this endorsement by the ANC mean for you?
Well, I must say I'm a very proud South African today, which is why I have my South African flag. I think, I didn't grow up fully in apartheid, but I have parents who grew up, and my grandfather was an activist, and I'm very proud that at least we come from a history where we have stood up for oppression. Irrespective of race, color, religion, we have people who take oppression seriously, and I'm very proud to be here with the ANC as well as ordinary South Africans. So, and I'm here with all my kids. Well, I have 3 children, and I've got some friends' kids here. I have a almost 1-year-old baby at home, and I think we can all agree that every single child deserves love and not war. So we are here to say end the war and free Palestine, and we will continue to fight for the rights of the oppressed, wherever they may be.
And upon descending at the Israeli embassy, when you move in a couple of minutes, what is the strong message that you as activists would like to send to the Israeli government?
I think the Israeli government can learn a lot from South Africa and from South Africans. I would love the Israeli government to look at our children and know that every child deserves a chance at life. I cannot believe that people can witness what we've seen over the past few weeks and not feel that this war needs to end. But there is no justice without peace. Or peace without justice. There is no peace without justice. So while the war must end, the Palestinians needs to be granted their freedom and their justice. So that is our message to the Israeli embassy, and I think as well that the South African government needs to take a stern stance on any government that is oppressing people. So we support the stance of a South African government who supports the freedom of Palestinians, and to have sanctions on Israeli goods where they come from occupied lands, and to stop any trade with Israel until this war ends.
All right, thank you very much. That was Fatima. I am going to ask my colleague Sia to give you a view of some of the many interested groups that have joined the ANC, the governing party, ahead of that march to the Israeli embassy, which will take place, we expect, in the next few moments. They'll be heading over there to reaffirm their long-standing position towards the people of Palestine. Over to you in studio, Aldrin.
To the Israeli embassy, where Kailihle Khumalo, SABC News reporter, as well as international news editor Sophie Mukwena is standing by. Kaya, good morning once again. Also, a statement that has now just come through from the presidency is that President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to attend a peace summit in Egypt at the invitation of the Egyptian president that will be taking place tomorrow.
Well, certainly, Aldrin, quite a very important summit there in Egypt. And we do know that the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been quite a very key player in terms of making sure that there is long-lasting peace between Israelis and the Palestinians. But also in Cairo, we've seen so many international envoys from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, coming there, emphasizing the issue of Rafah crossing. We do know that the summit is going to focus on quite a number of issues, Aldrin. The issue around the hostage taking, calling for the unconditional release of those hostages from Israel, but also most importantly, the issue around humanitarian aid, given the very catastrophe that is unfolding in Gaza Strip. So just looking perhaps at the issue around the ceasefire, but another very important element here will have to be around the resumption of the peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians. We do know that for the longest time that issue has not been really just happening for some time, and in light of this conflict, this has really become more pressing. But also at this particular point in time, Eldrin, I'm just going to bring into our very own discussion, our very own international editor here, the SABC, Sophie Mukwena. Sophie, quite a very important statement from the presidency. We know that Egypt is quite important. This is a very influential Arab state in terms of making sure that we see a long-lasting peace between Palestine and Israel.
Yes, indeed, you are correct, Kaya. As you know that the president has been consistent in terms of the ANC policy that dates back before 1994, that there should be a two-state solution. And therefore, a decision by Egypt to call this peace summit. As you know that the UN Secretary General is also in Egypt to talk about this issue. I think South Africa saw it fit to participate in the peace talks. But the reality is right now, when you look at the Israel side, they are not happy about South Africa's position in relation to the statements and also the utterances made by the governing party. And therefore, the question is, well and good for South Africa to be part of this initiative because the world wants peace. But will all sides accept South Africa's participation? We know that this will not be the first time where South Africa is part of all the initiatives to bring peace in the Middle East. You know that on many occasions, the late former President Mandela called for peace in the Middle East. Actually, yesterday I was at the archives going through the material statements of different South African leaders post-1994. And I listened to former President Mandela where he was making a very passionate plea for the two sides to engage in talks and the two sides to agree on a two-state solution. I looked at the material. The former president, Kgalema Motlanthe, also talking about a need for two-state solution, even talking about his experience visiting Palestine. I saw the former South African president, Jacob Zuma, addressing some ANC rally, also calling for two-state solution. And I saw Thabo Mbeki also talking about the two-state solution. And last week he spoke about how at some point in time, the late Deputy Minister Aziz Pahad and the late former President Mandela worked very hard. But later, during his tenure, former President Mbeki saying the late Aziz Pahad and the former Minister Trevor Manuel organizing a meeting in a farm between representatives of the Israeli and also of the Palestinians. So South Africa has been involved in trying to broker peace. But the reality is you have to have support of both sides. And therefore, the question is, does South Africa take its position as a neutral and also a credible, accepted party in terms of calling for talks? And therefore, it will depend on Saturday in Cairo, who will be there to participate.
And Sophie, I mean, you have quite a number of pro-Palestine activists who have been very clear in saying that South Africa should cut off the diplomatic ties with Israel. We do know that the issue of downgrading of ties has been a very topical issue. I mean, today, South Africa really doesn't have an ambassador who's there currently. And also, we do know that South Africa, we have a significant number of the Jewish community who are saying it's quite important to make sure that we have these ties with Israel, but also calling for the two-state solution.
Well, the former Minister of Police or Safety and Security, Canny Maphanga, who's currently the security advisor of President Ramaphosa, when he was speaking at the memorial service organized by DIRCO for the late former Deputy Minister Aziz Pat spoke about a need when you want to broker peace to ensure that you engage everybody, irrespective of how you feel about those warring factions. And therefore, I think the issue of downgrading of the Israel embassy was a statement, but if you really want to engage Israel, you will have to have a platform and a way and where you can communicate with the Israelis or the government of Israel. And therefore, when you have a diplomatic office, you have access to those people. Now, when you close it completely, how are you going to engage with them? For example, today you want to hand over a memorandum. How do you hand over a memorandum when there's no office to take the memorandum and send it to Tel Aviv? So I think those are the issues that the government is grappling with. But downgrading the status in Israel, it was done. But closing the embassy, we don't know. This is something that we will continuously monitor. But we know other parties feel very strong, including the EFF that is going to march again on Monday here. But they have nothing to lose. They are not in government for now.
And just before I let you go, Sophie, we've seen ferocious attacks, the shelling, the religious institutions, the hospitals. Surely this is a war that is escalating. We're talking off air about now the ground operation that is really intensifying.
Well, yesterday we saw the United States of America taking a decision to warn its citizens worldwide about the challenges ahead. That speaks to this conflict at this moment. It has escalated to something big. The whole region, we saw the reaction. I was talking to you that the Saudi Arabia leader, Mohammed bin Salman, just called for a two-state solution now. We saw that message. Yesterday, President Biden spoke about the support to Israel, but now it looks like America is trying to strike a balance, because much as is critical of Hamas, they are saying ordinary Palestinians deserve peace and the two parties must speak. And therefore, that has kind of affected a decision and a program of Israel in terms of the ground operation. We see now, just now I was looking at wires and information from Israel, is that it looks like they are reviewing the timing of the ground operations. It is because of this pressure. And I think even the pressure on Saturday in Cairo will add to Israel perhaps considering, but they'll continue to bombard Gaza. When I spoke to the minister a few days ago, he was clear that they will bombard Gaza even if it means ordinary Palestinians are caught in a crossfire. That was shocking for me. So we see these movements and we don't know what's likely going to happen. But the fear is that if you don't manage this conflict, the whole region is going to be engulfed in a horrible, horrible conflict.
All right, Sophie, thank you so much indeed for your time there, Eldrin. That's the SABC's international editor. Sophie, we're going to really just talk about the far-reaching implications for that particular region, but also for the world, the significance of the Middle East, when it comes to the global chain supply. When you talk about the issue of energy, Middle East is a very central player, especially because you look at countries like Iran as well, Hezbollah in Lebanon as well, talking about really just intensifying their offensive. But we're still stationed outside here, the Israeli embassy in Pretoria. Security, like we have stated repeatedly, has been heightened here to make sure that everything just goes according to plan. But also, Eldrin, we've seen these global marches all over the capitals, whether you're talking about Latin America, you talk about the European cities, you talk about countries right in the southern tip of Africa, where we've seen those who are pro-Palestine and those who are saying, look, Israel does have a right to defend itself in light of that 7th October incursion in Israel. With that, back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much. That is Kailihle Khumalo there joining us from Pretoria at the Israeli Embassy.